You're listening to Paris: A State of Mind on Paris Underground Radio. For more great content, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/Paris Underground Radio.
Welcome to Paris: A State of Mind. Join us as we talk about the good, the bad, the ins, the outs of property rentals and purchases in and around Paris. We'll have topics for renters, owners, and visitors, share questions we are regularly asked, and more. My name is Gail Boisclair of Perfectly Paris, and my co-host is Marie Pistinier of Lokim Paris. Be a part of it. Both of us are proud members of the SPLM, the first representative body of furnished rental professionals. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Paris: A State of Mind. We are continuing on with our series talking to different people about what it's like living in their arrondissement. Today, we have the pleasure of having fellow podcast host Emily Monaco. She's the host of Navigating the French, and she's even more well-known as a Paris-based journalist. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me, Gail. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. And now, where do you actually live? What arrondissement do you live in?
So I currently live in the 10th arrondissement of Paris. So kind of halfway between the Canal Saint-Martin and Gare de l'Est.
Ah, okay. Interesting. And so what is your closest metro station?
My closest metro station is Château-Landon. But I will admit, I am, ever since moving to central Paris from the 15th, I've actually given up my Navigo pass. So I don't actually take the metro all that often.
Oh, wow. So do you use bikes to get around?
No, I walk everywhere. I decided right before the great, let's not talk about it, when we had this awful, I'm sure you remember, Gail, this awful metro strike. And I realized that I was spending more time waiting on crowded metro platforms than I would have taken to just walk from point A to point B. So living pretty centrally, I find that pretty much everywhere I want to go is within a 35-minute walk of wherever I already was. And so I just worked the time to walk everywhere into my schedule, and I gave up my Navigo and I gave up my gym membership, and I've never been happier.
Woohoo. And actually you save a lot of money, so then you can use that money to buy like beer, wine, I don't know.
Cheese.
Treats. Cheese. And
exactly.
Cheese. That cheese
yes.
girl. Well, and then so how long has it been since you've lived in the 10th?
So I have been living in the 10th for 3 months.
Oh, wow. So it's fairly new. Interesting. And so why did you choose to move there in that area? Was it just luck of the draw of what you found as an apartment, or it's really where you wanted to make the move to?
I think it was a combination of things. It was already an area that I was spending a lot of time in. I was living in the Marais, I was living in the North Marais, so it's not too far from where I am, but I was spending a lot of time in the 10th. And then it's also luck of the draw. I actually moved in with somebody who already had an apartment in the 10th. So I didn't have to do any of the legwork, which was great for me.
Yeah, that saves a lot of time. I actually just had dinner with somebody last night who's been doing legwork. She just moved back to Paris to get an apartment. Not fun.
No.
And what were like in your ideas about the 10th? Do you feel now that you're living there? Well, first of all, since you had been coming there a lot, have you been coming there for like a long time? So it was kind of just a natural progression for you to live in the 10th?
Yeah, I think so. I've been living in Paris for 15 years, and I originally lived always on the left bank.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I moved to the right bank, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm coming home. But that was originally in the Marais. But no matter what, I was like, oh, okay, it's lively, it's vibrant, it's kind of more what I wanted. And then I think moving to the 10th it was sort of a lot of different things. Number one, it's a little less expensive than actually living in the Marais, but still really close to the Marais. So I liked that aspect of it. I didn't really want to be spending such a huge percentage of my income on rent anymore. Also, I really love being close to major train stations, so Gare de l'Est and Gare du Nord. But I think, the reason I was spending so much time up here is, this is where a lot of the places that I like to go out are. And that's not just for nightlife. I mean, it's where my favorite bakeries are. It's where a lot of my favorite food shops are. I also work in addition to being a journalist and a podcaster, I'm also a culinary tour guide, and I've run a lot of tours up here for years. So I think there were just a lot of different things that sort of led me to want to be up here. And then the opportunity presented itself for me to move into a place that I love in a neighborhood that I love. And I would have been crazy not to take it. So
Yeah, it sounds like it. And so for somebody who's not been in the 10th in the area where you are, what type of vibe do you think it gives off in terms of people who live there? Would you say like singles, families, couples?
I think there's a lot of singles and young couples up here.
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty hipstery. I think it's not quite as hipstery as the adjacent 11th, which I've heard a friend who lives there describe as the Williamsburg of Paris. So I'm, if she's in the Williamsburg of Paris, God, my modern New York geography is off, but it's a little less vibey, a little less hipstery, a little less expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I would say there are still little pockets of the 10th where you can find a really good deal on rent. So I think a lot of people who really want to be central, but maybe can't afford to be in either the 11th or the Marais choose the 10th. So young people, there's also a little bit of assisted housing here. There's some apartment blocks that are less expensive than in other places. So you do get some students here as well, which is kind of cool.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And is there something that you wish you knew in advance prior to living in the 10th about the area that you think our listeners should know?
I think this is also equally true about living near any body of water, but living near the canal means that my apartment gets quite a bit of damp in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a problem that a lot of Parisians have to deal with, but I've not noticed it as much in any other neighborhood that I've lived in. And now it's not just my apartment. I have a friend who lives on the other side of the canal, and she deals a lot with damp. And I think, that's an issue. It's not a sexy issue, but it's an issue that people talk about a lot in Paris is like black mold and keeping your bathroom like aerated and stuff. So I actually ended up getting some of these like little pots of calcium citrate that you like put in your dampest corners of your apartment to try and absorb some of that moisture. And that seems to be working pretty well.
Oh, good.
So that's one thing. Another thing maybe is, I think this is also true when you move to a neighborhood that you love, you're not going to want to leave it anymore. So I think when I moved to the 10th, I stopped going anywhere else in Paris, and I have to be really convinced to leave the 10th and go, hang out with friends in the 18th or the 19th or, I'm like, no, come to the 10th, come to the 10th. It's great.
Oh, I'm the same way though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like pulling teeth to get me to leave the 18th.
Yeah.
Like the where? What, you want me to go what? What? Across the river?
I have to get on the metro?
No. And I am like you. I am definitely this side of the river type of girl too.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what else can we think of? Well, you said that it's just a great neighborhood. It sounds like that you found your neighborhood love of your life.
Yeah, I really think I did. I think in Paris especially, it's really nice to have a cafe that you can go to that's where it's great and you can always get a seat, a bakery that you love, and maybe a couple of neighborhood restaurants that you love. And I already had all of those things before I moved here. So it was just a matter of turning those like once in a blue moon pleasures into like my regular haunts. And that was a really nice transition for me.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so here's a question that I've been asking everybody. Imagine that the fairy god person of Paris Apartments came down and said that you could have any apartment you wanted in any area of Paris. Nothing is impossible. Anything that you want. Where would it be and what type of apartment would you want?
Ooh, okay. Okay, I'm going to answer what type of apartment it'd be first because I have to think a little bit about the neighborhood. But what type it would be is I would definitely want a bathtub because I don't have one anymore. I used to, and I miss having a bathtub. I have one of those little like galley kitchens that you find a lot in Paris apartments, and it's nice. I would really like to have an American-sized fridge. I had one before. I don't have one anymore. It's like a little low bar type fridge. I wish I had a bigger fridge. But other than that, and you know what? I wish I had a cave.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I rent like a storage space, and luckily it's 2 right turns and I'm there. It's a 4-minute walk from where I live, but there's just not enough storage in Paris apartments. Although I hear London's even worse, but there's not enough storage. So I wish I had big closets, and I wish I had a cave in my building downstairs where I could put my slippers on and go get something if I needed it.
So a bathtub, a big fridge, a cave, and a big kitchen, American style kitchen.
Yeah. And then you know what? And then I'll stop being quite so greedy, because those are a lot of things to ask for in Paris. You know, I can deal with the induction stovetop instead of gas. That's okay. But yeah, those things are pretty important. But in terms of neighborhood, I really think that I am where I want to be. When I first moved to Paris, I really wanted to be at La Marque-Colincourt in the 18th.
Mm-hmm.
And I still do love that neighborhood. And when I was sort of looking around for a place to live in the right bank of Paris, I really wanted to live in Belleville. And both of those neighborhoods I still love, and I still love spending time in them. But because I mostly move around on foot, being that far outside of Paris means that it's actually going to become impossible for me to ever go to the left bank. So it's better for me to be somewhere slightly central. So I would say, yeah, honestly, I think either where I am or, you know, somewhere else in the 10th bordering on the 11th. Kind of, I always used to say that I wanted to live in the triangle between Filles-du-Calvaire, Oberkampf, and Jacques-Mont-Sergent. And I still think that's true. Kind of that triangle among the North Marais, right around République, and like the farthest west bits of the 11th. And I still think that's kind of my sweet spot.
Well, that's pretty good. So you're pretty well where you need to be. We just have to create that magic apartment for you.
I know, someone just has to bring me a bathtub.
Yeah. And a big fridge.
And a big fridge. Yeah.
If you're enjoying this episode of Paris, A State of Mind, you may also be interested in our sister podcast, Romancing in Paris. Join Lily as she shares her secret and some not-so-secret spots for lovers and lovers of Paris. And now back to Paris, A State of Mind. Well, thank you. That was interesting. So, I mean, I think that you're very lucky to be living really where you feel like you want to be. And I think that's going to be really great for any listeners who are thinking about living in the 10th or wondering what it's like. Do you have anything else to add about your favorite arrondissement?
I will say that, like, one of the things I love so much about it is also one of the things that is a little bit dicier about it, which is living really close to 2 major train stations. So I love it because I go often to London. And so it's a 15-minute walk to Gare du Nord, which means that I can get those really cheap Eurostar tickets that leave at 8:30 in the morning, because it's not that far away. But living really close to major train stations does mean that you expose yourself to a little bit more petty crime. I've been lucky enough, you know, knock wood, to not have dealt with anything too scary or upsetting, but I think it's just a question of awareness and, you know, being aware that when you either go over to the train station first thing in the morning or when you're coming home late at night, you just have to be a little more vigilant than if you were living in an area that's, you know, like when I was living in the North Marais. Although I will say that it was when I was living in the North Marais that I actually had someone expose himself to me in front of my front door.
Gosh.
And that's not happened to me in the 10th. So, I mean, I think part of it is vigilance and part of it is luck of the draw. But any city in the world near the train stations is going to be where you get an accumulation of, you know, a little bit of petty crime, riffraff. Yeah. So that's probably the only thing that I would say to be aware of living in the 10th. But other than that, you know, it's really awesome for people who want to discover different food. There's a lot of like vegetarian and vegan options. There's a lot of craft coffee. I'm a big coffee fan, so having good craft coffee near me is really important. Great bakeries, great restaurants, a little bit more off the beaten path than some other neighborhoods in Paris, which I do like because working in tourism, when I come home, I like to feel like I'm going home and I've left work. And I think that having a neighborhood that's still vibrant, but that is a little bit off the track of where I usually do my work is really nice as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure it's nice to have a little bit of a break. That was all really super. And I thank you very much for participating in my little series here. And I'd like you to just recap who you are, what you do, and if people want to contact you, how they can connect with you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you first off so much for having me. This has been super fun. And I love sharing my love of the 10th with other folks. So my name is Emily Monaco. And yes, that is my real name. I am an American, but I've been living in France for 15 years now, and I work as a culinary journalist for publications like the BBC and Atlas Obscura and Sever, Food and Wine, things like that. I also run food tours through Paris, and I also, what else do I do? I'm a podcaster. I host a show called Navigating the French on this network, and I co-host a show called the Terroir Podcast, so you can find me there. And I am also on Instagram, where I mostly talk about my love of all things cheese. And my handle is Emily_in_France. I'm the original Emily in Paris, but I wasn't smart enough to get the name first.
Oh, darn it. I never even thought of that name.
Yeah.
You would, I think that your Instagram account would be blowing up had you been Emily in Paris. Darn it.
So, yeah. Follow me and prove the love of real cheese is stronger than the love of crazy hats.
Yeah, there you go. I agree. I prefer cheese over hats too. Well, thanks again and have a lovely rest of your week and hope to see you soon.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Paris, A State of Mind, featuring Gail of Perfectly Paris and Marie of Loquim, both who are founding members of the SPLM. Paris, A State of Mind is produced by Paris Underground Radio. The music, Jazz in Paris, is by Media Right Productions. For more information on this show and others, go to parisundergroundradio.com.
This episode of Paris, A State of Mind was produced by Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio. For more great content, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/Paris Underground Radio.